Iburu, Iboya, Ibucheche, everybody in Cyberland, your fair bow out. At least I hope so. Omodun, Odileke coming at you with another great video. And this particular video, just to get down and dirty, I'm going to give a shout out to an email that I received. For those of you who don't know, my email, very simple, la.regla.de.ifa@gmail.com. I know I said it's simple, probably not, but all it is at the end of the day, 4 words, la regla de IFA. La regla de IFA. All have dots in between at Gmail. la.regla.de.ifa@gmail.com. La regla de IFA@gmail. But anyway, why I tell you this? Because I love getting emails. I like to hear what you have to say. I love reading the comments. It doesn't matter what platform, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, it doesn't matter. I love it. I love it. Why? Because I like to engage with the viewers. I like to understand where they're coming from. Well, anyway, Tisa sent me an email. So Tisa, thank you for sending me the email. Tisa wants to explore her Odun, wants to understand her Ikofa a little bit more. Tisa is doing the right thing by understanding that her mano de orula, no different than when I give mano de orula, right, or awofaka or Ikofa to a person, and my godchildren are scattered everywhere, but we make it work, right? We make it work, right? And it's a a give and take relationship. But I tell you this because Tisa is doing that give and take. She's asking, she's looking for advice. She wants to understand patakis, and that's a beautiful thing. So Tisa, well done, well done. So Tisa is Ogunda Belde. And in Ogunda Belde, we talk a lot about a lot of spiritual and universal law, rightfully so. Because Ogunda Belde has a lot of different orishas that represent Ogunda Belde. Ogunda Belde is like the rainbow, a lot of different flavors. But Ogunda Bele is held to a high standard. Ogunda Bele, this is the reason why it tells you in Ogunda Bele, anybody who has Ogunda Bele, the first thing we say is, hey, be careful about being seduced, the temptation. Be careful about being jealous, right? You pushing out. Being careful of not honoring your promises because that is a taboo in your sign. It talks a lot about where the prosperities in your life come by way of the Orishas. Why? Because Ogunda Bele and this sign, anybody who has this sign understands that you were chosen to walk this earth spiritually, ethically, morally, bringing the community together in order to bring the word of God to this world. Oguna Bele is a sign that talks a lot about making sure that while you are on this mission, we understand that things will sacrifice. You will begin to sacrifice your family. You will begin to sacrifice relationships. You will begin to not even trust people very much because you have an intuitive instinct that begins to make you find the flaws in people. That's Oguna Bele. It's not your fault. You just have a destiny to fulfill. That's why in Ogunda Bele, we got to be able to open up that spiritual journey, that spiritual door, walk you through your destiny, right? That's why Ogunda Bele, even when you receive Ikofa and Awofaka and Ogunda Bele, we have to reinforce your Ifa. Okay. Now, the Babalaos know what I'm talking about. Now, in Ogunda Bele, this is also a sign that talks about the intuitive and the inquisitive nature of Ogunda Bele. You know who Ogunda Bele is? The person that wants to read everything they get their hands on. The person who likes to look at the initiations before they're not even initiated. The person who wants to read all the oduns and the secrets and the ceremonies, and they're not even a priest or a priestess. Why do you have that urge? You know you're not supposed to. You know that's taboo and you know Eshu's watching. So why do you do it? Right? Because it's Ogunda Bele. It's Ogunda Bele. So with that said, Ogunda Bele has an aspect that needs to be understood. And I want to share it with a pataki. And in this pataki, we talk about the representation of a wild loafing on earth. And in this pataki, we begin to explore that Olofin called a meeting of the 16 Mayis, right? Ogbe down to Aregun. because they believed that each of them individually represented Olofin and his virtues on this earth. Olofin obviously was being informed by Alegba, right? And they knew about the dispute, the fight between the 16 maids over power. Who was better? Who really was the right possession of Olofin to truly dictate them all? Right? So he calls the meeting, and at the meeting he demanded, or he didn't demand, but the 16 maids demanded from Olofin be represented by one of them on the earth. So Olofin goes through this lecture with the 16 maids that is impossible, because there is more than meets the eye than just the 16 maids. The 16 kings, the 16 principal Odun will eventually have to multiply in order to truly grasp the essence that is Olofin, which is the essence of Olodumare, to truly make this work. And after they went through this, they began to realize that, okay, well, if we're here, then who and how do we begin this process? So Olofi invoked the Odun of Ogunda Belde. And through this Odun comes an aspect of Ogun and Eyobe. The first Omolu, okay, the first Omolu, when we start talking about the traditional aspect of this Pataki, where Olofin said Ogunda Belde was going to be the first Omolu in order to truly understand and truly bring together the 16 maids in order for them to truly come and manifest within the 256 Oduns. This is a Pataki that's in Ogunda Belde. Now, many people will be like, well, the first Omolu would be Eyobe Oyekun, and that is true. That is the first Omolu after the 16 maids. But in this Pataki, there is an ethical perspective that we need to understand, and it's the importance of Ogunda Belde. Ogunda Belde was now in charge of making sure that we consolidate these 16 maids and ensure that the spiritual aspects of the 256 oracles comes to fruition on this earth. Because it was at that moment that Olofin said that it would be the Awoni Orumilas that will be in charge of invoking the 256 Oduns in order to capture the essence, the ethical and the moral aspects. And what is that work, that spiritual work, that brujeria, whatever you want to call it, that we need to do in order to manifest the energy of Awa Olofin? Ogunda Belde talks about this. Ogunda Belde begins to explain this. But Ogunda Belde, through this process, right now, Ogunda Belde has the energy of the 16 maids and places himself also in the mix of the 16 maids, making it 17, right? And meshed in. But what Ogunda Belde was asked by Olofi, well, you are going to be in this mix. Where do you want to fall? And Ogunda Belde, this is why Ogunda Belde is not the next Omolu or the first Omolu, because Ogunda Belde says, Baba, I want to be exactly where I need to be with Ogunda and Ogbe, because I understand through your words that the disobedience in the Oduns will cost lives and it will lead to losses. And Ogunda Belde right there in his humble perspective was placed where he needed to be placed. Okay. But at that very moment, Olofin said, Ogunda Belde, you are wise to think and manifest as an Omolu to represent me on this earth. But not only will you represent me like the 256 Oduns are going to represent me. Olofin said, I want to make something clear. I'm going to send Chango and Ogun, who are my trusted Orishas, my trusted ones, and represent, right? Here comes the interesting part. This is why Chango lives on my right and Ogun lives on my left. And together with me, they will have strength and wisdom. We will impart strength and wisdom. So through the Awoni Orumilas, through Orumila's wisdom, we will begin to invoke the Orisha's wisdom through Chango and Ogun. Iburuboya. So let's dig into that. Right? So now we begin to see all these elements within this pataki. And this pataki is very interesting because it's a representation, right? And it speaks leadership, right? The story emphasizes what? The importance of the collective representation rather than individual dominance, one person representing Awa Olofin. No, Olofin's decision was no single Odun can represent him on earth. The acknowledgement that both the Meis and the Omolus, they reflect the ethical principles and the inclusivity, right? And the shared leadership that's required for this earth. Humility and service. Right? Look at Ogunda Bedé. Let's look at Ogunda Bedé. And this is why any child of Ogunda Bedé is very, very, very important for them to focus on what is being said here. Because it is all about humility and service. The virtues, right, of humility and the willingness to serve is massive in Ogunda Bedé. By being one of the first Omolus to represent Olofin on this earth, there is an implicit ethical lesson that needs to be learned here. That's the reason why Ogunda Bedé has a laundry list of things. Don't do this, don't do that, don't break promises, live through Orishas. The Orishas will bring you whatever you need. Okay. Now, you talk about the respect for the tradition and the elders. The act of paying respect to Olofin, right, by Ogunda Bedé and the others signifies the deep respect for the tradition, where the 16 maids understood their roles, even though they were principal and Ogunda Bedé was an Omolu, they understood their role, they understood their place. There was a respect for that Awa Olofin, a respect that we need to also invoke in our day-to-day lives. The balance of power, right? The presence of Changon and Ogun, right? The right Chango, the left is Ogun. And be together, they bring the strength and the wisdom into the earth, right? Through the wisdom and the Ifa oracles that Orumila is bringing through the 256 Oduns, through his disciples, the Awoni Orumilas, the Bawalaos, boom, we got framework for our spiritual practice. Very interesting things. Very interesting. So I wanted to share that pataki. I wanted to give a shout out to Tisa. Thank you for the email. And for everybody else, shoot me an email. Give me a like. Give me a share. Spread the good word. And with that said, Iburu, Iboya, Ibucheche.